Good afternoon. We are Group 2 and today we're going to talk about JK case study. To start with, we identified several reasons for JK to change. Among them are competition. Competition started winning back some of the customers of JK. The market was shrinking also since the customers were cutting their costs and making reductions in the size and the frequency of the orders. Customers also reduced the needed speed of the service. This had a negative effect on the JK costs. The design of the orders is a fixed cost and it remains the same regardless of the increase in the volume. Additionally, there were signs that some customers switched to the in-house printing instead of going to the printers. These changes, the changes that were proposed in the case, actually aimed on reducing the lead time. Namely, the customer orders were reduced in volumes, but the setup time remained the same, so the office staff was as busy as always, while the printers were not fully utilized. The suggested change implied the increase in the number of design staff and consequently reducing the time of the design activity from 2 to 5 weeks to 2 to 3 days. In this way, the company effectiveness would increase as they would be able to process a higher number of the orders and increase the number of the customers.
Depending from which argument you choose to follow, the focus of change can be seen from one of two lenses. The system as defined by Miller defines 4 principal organizational subsystems: organizational goals and values, technical subsystem, psychological subsystem, and managerial subsystems. Setting of common goals, methods of group working together, and developing a coherent strategy are some examples of this. The managing director, and I believe the marketing design manager, sought to create organizational changes which would lower costs and provide a competitive edge. The suggested way forward, presented by the design manager, reduced the bottleneck in design and would allow existing assets and resources within the printers to be used more efficiently. This would absorb overheads over a larger number of units and therefore reduce the costs across the company. For this reason, I believe that the focus was on system level change, shaping the organisation and its ways of working. If, as the other managers believed, the marketing and design manager was operating for his own self-interest, then it could be argued that it was merely group changes which were proposed. This is due to the rest of the organisation being ignored when it came to making direct changes to their processes or resources in order to solve the issues at hand.
In order to answer this question, we will use the main contextual factors mentioned by Bernice's book, Managing Change, and compare them to the different events that occurred when the change wanted to be initiated by the management of JK to determine the company's readiness for change. The contextual factors to determine readiness for change are related to effective leadership, the quality of relationships between managers and employees, organizational commitment, communication climate, change strategy aligned with values, high level of employee participation, and a change agent with necessary change skills. After analyzing the case study, the first clue that shows us how the change was initiated is revealing of their lack of preparation. Indeed, the marketing and design manager inherited the mission of driving change and returned with a solution very quickly, too quickly to be precise. This rapidly provided solution is an indicator of the lack of consultation with the teams in order to create an organizational commitment and a strong involvement of employees. In our case study, the other departments quickly expressed their disagreement with the proposed solution and how to implement it. To be ready for change, an organization must be prepared for it. On reading the case, we do not feel that a coherent strategy has been put in place by the management to bring about change. It was more of a decision based on pseudo-objective parameters, like the fact that the marketing manager has a new perspective on the company, or that he who proposed the solution.
Well, we have 4 main reasons. The first reason is the way change was managed. The fact that the marketing and design manager proposed a solution without taking into account the opinion of other departments and managers resulted in a low level of participation of them. In fact, the proposal considered only his perspective and was not as a result of team analysis and collaboration. The second reason regards the nature of change and challenging degree to individuals. The idea to increase and make more efficient the already good level of service JK had was considered as a nonsense idea. Additionally, the idea of hiring a new designer was rejected in recent past. Both reasons are related to the depth of intervention theory, which states that the resistance is affected by the level of individuals' involvement. The third reason is based on the dispositional resistance theory, which indicates that the relationship between individuals and the change agent affects resistance. Because the marketing and design manager was a relative newcomer, he was considered as lacking deep knowledge, and his proposal was seen as opportunistic and tending to impair build. Finally, the last reason is the lack of a process of constructive engagement and communication of the benefits of the proposal.
Speaking about the commitment for change, we can highlight that according to the activity planning approach by Becker and Harris to an effective activity plan in GK's case study, we can easily identify how these characteristics were not considered. First of all, speaking about relevance, the activities were not clearly linked to the change goals and priorities. About specificity, we can see how the activities were not identified rather than broadly generalized on lower the cost. There was no integration, the parts were not closely connected. Line managers, for example, were not involved in the making decision process or proposal. And then about chronology, there was no logical sequence to implement change. At the end, adaptability. There were not contingency plans to adjust to unexpected changes. They were afraid of change. And we can say they showed reluctance to the solution, which led to no agreement being met. So, according to Beckers and Harris, a commitment plan is a strategy describing different series of action steps and devised to secure the support of those individuals or even groups. And as a suggestions, they could have first identified the target of individuals or groups whose commitment was really necessary within the company. As a second point, they could have defined the critical mass needed to ensure the effectiveness of the change and develop a plan for gaining the commitment of all the teams. And at the end, developing a monitoring system to assess the progress, whether they were able to adapt or modify it.
Who was a change agent? For this question, we will consider the definition that Pettigrew and Wick proposed as supporters of the emergent change approach, which states that a change agent is not a neutral facilitator, but an active manager of the change process with his own agenda, which they seek to impose or promote. According to this definition, the change agent is considered to be the marketing and design manager. He actively proposed his challenging approach to GK's situation, offering a solution of cost reduction and service level increase. It is important to mention that it is not clearly stated that the marketing and design manager was appointed as the change agent, just given the chance to give a proposal. Therefore, this reduced his responsibility for the change and its outcome, providing a partial solution to the future success of the organization. Secondly, did they have the appropriate set of skills? For this question, we will briefly mention skill sets to evaluate the marketing and design manager as a change agent. According to Boddy and Buchanan, change agents should have a preferred set of skills including action skills, diagnostic skills, and cognitive and communication skills. Considering this, we can see that while the change agent evaluated several aspects of the system, he didn't do deep research about the other departments or even ask managers about their needs or about their opportunity areas. For example, he only reported his view of the low efficiency on the printing department without considering the request for new equipment or their ideas for improvement. Regarding diagnostic and cognitive skills, he was very proactive and even suggested a different and challenging approach to GK printer situation. But on the other hand, he did not take enough time to evaluate the readiness for change or offered a plan for the change and its outcome. Finally, regarding communication skills, the marketing and design manager did not evaluate or consider other perspectives or persuaded others to share his proposed solution. This relates to kernel coalition building core competence, which is essential for effective management of change.
The initial transformation in GK's equipments and processes mentioned in the case indicates that the company experienced change. To tackle the issue related to competition and most importantly, the transformation in the buyer's habit, GK wanted to strategize and transform by improving in their level of service, which is cutting costs that would lead to the cut in prices and improving the efficiency of the company's operations. We can conclude that based on this, GK wanted to bring changes in their level of performance. Miller and Frazen, to Gersik and Orlikowski, identifies that this type of change is characterized as punctuated change, as the groups were experiencing change in the sales and marketing departments, performing activities. Amongst the other varieties mentioned include forming, storming, norming, and adjusting. GK's efforts in scanning the company's environment, recognizing the forces for change, and acting accordingly proceeded to the conclusion of the magnitude of the change. Again, we need to remember that GK was at the mercy of the market forces, which the buyers are the ones who created and controlled this change. Taking from Pettigrew et al.'s idea, the magnitude of change that GK required had a relatively small adjustment as the necessary change occurred within the department. The managing director opted it and agreed that GK needed an operational change to cope with the change in regards to the company's scale and importance for the small-scale family business.